Hey guys, welcome. I haven't done a live Q&A in a little while. I think there's some of you that are going to be missing out given the time of day that I'm doing this, but here to answer any of your questions, whatever is on your mind. I'm really curious as to what the things that you're working on are. I'm only doing this on YouTube. I got a few things in the works that are just taking a little bit longer than I expected, but been doing a lot of research and development, learning a lot more about how to best serve a serverless Django application on Google Cloud platform. Really excited about that. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I'll be here for, 30 minutes maybe to answer any and all questions. I didn't really plan on doing this, but I reorganized how my studio's all set up. So that's why I'm here. So yeah, let me know what your questions are and we'll get into it. I'm super excited for Turing Pi 2. Coming up soon, I'm going to be talking to one of the co-founders on the podcast and just answering or asking him a bunch of questions on what's going on with Turing Pi, where they see like Raspberry Pis going and stuff like that. So should be pretty cool. I should have done this maybe at, 8 p.m. later tonight. I don't know. We'll see. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've done a stream, Bruno. Thanks for coming out. Part of the reason that it's been so long is because I've been super deep diving into building better serverless applications. And I did a huge migration. So codingforentrepreneurs.com was on Heroku forever, pretty much. And I ended up moving it over to being completely on Google Cloud Platform. So it's all serverless. It's just such a joy. It's a little bit harder to manage because with serverless applications, you actually have to build a Docker container for it to run, and then it starts to run. Where Heroku, you just push your code and it does all the building there, and it actually builds it much faster than a Google Cloud Platform, or really just Docker builds. Docker builds take a while anyway, you know what I mean? Hey, Victor, what's going on? Welcome. What do I recommend the future of demo is? Demo. What do you mean by demo? Is that a programming language that I don't know about, or a platform that I don't know about? I don't know. When am I coming up with a new Django project? Soon. Django 3.2 is right around the corner in a few months. Hopefully it won't take a few months for me to have another Django project here on YouTube. But on my website, I have a lot of projects that are out, and I'm working on Elastic Django right now, which is on my website. So definitely check that one out. It's how you integrate Elasticsearch with Django. It's really cool. Elasticsearch is awesome. I'm shocked I haven't used it earlier, honestly. Hey, what's up? Entertainment Vibes. Welcome. DevOps jobs. You're looking for DevOps jobs. DevOps is really interesting because it's not quite coding and it's not quite complete networking. It's like a nice combination of both of those things. I don't know what DevOps jobs means. Is that a question? How do you deploy Django to AWS? Now, AWS actually has a lot of options for this, as you may be aware of. So you can deploy it to they have two different serverless options. One is AWS Lambda. So you can actually deploy Django on there using something called Zappa. I cover that on my website, both in a blog post as well as a series. And then there's AWS Fargate. That's another one that I haven't used yet. But those are managed service. You can also spin up your own EC2 instance, which is a virtual machine, which basically means that you have the complete operating system that you just SSH into and build out your code. So that's at least three ways to do it. There's probably a lot more than just that. I'm trying to remember if there's another one. Elastic Beanstalk, that's something I did a while back as well. Deno. What is the future of Deno? Deno. What is Deno? A secure runtime of JavaScript and TypeScript. That is a great question. I haven't used Deno. Yes, I have used this. It's been a little while since I used it though. I don't have an answer for you. Thanks for the question. I should probably look into Deno a little bit more. The Node and Node.js and JavaScript stuff, I am not nearly as into, as in I don't research it nearly as much as I probably should, because I'm doing a lot more things on the DevOps side. So that is, I really want to build my own home network and have like a legit network server with a network attached storage and all these things, and getting more into things like the Turing Pi as well. So that's why I don't know or use Deno. Hey, Tommy, what's up? Yeah, back on live. It's been a while. How are you doing? Thanks for the comment. Thanks for coming out. Is there something to like your opinion with? What I'm doing is you're a mechanical engineer, but you really got into programming, especially Python and Django. You even got a internship as a developer. I wonder if there's a better way to show these comments. Doesn't look like there is with just me. Thanks for the question. So you want to actually move into being a developer from being a mechanical engineer, or you want to leave being a mechanical engineer and go and be a developer. I think that the coolest thing about decisions is so many decisions are reversible. That is also a course of study. So let's say, for instance, you are about to graduate from college and you decided that you want to go a different path. Well, finish the degree that you've got, potentially, unless you've got many years left on it. But if you have a few weeks left, or maybe like 8 classes left, maybe just finish that degree and then try something else out. My uncle graduated as an electrical engineer. He studied, then later became an attorney. So he went to law school, and then he left that and started doing real estate development. So he had a bunch of different things, and now he has this like really good knowledge of all of those things. So I actually think it's really good to finish knowing something really well. Mechanical engineer, that is something I would love to know myself. So mechanical engineering, getting better with all that, and knowing those things well, because the stuff with computer science and programming, you don't necessarily need a degree in it, but there's going to be some really cool intersection between your knowledge of mechanical engineering with what you might do with programming later. So I would say stick with mechanical engineering as long as you can, because it's like this foundation of knowledge that you can use in so many areas in the future. And then just do programming as a hobby. Or if you get a job in programming, great, just go do that. You know what I mean? Thanks for the question, Crackdown. When do you use serverless versus server full? This is a good question. So basically, when do you use serverless? I think this is really the question. When do you use it versus the standard method of just having your server run all the time? I think by the vast majority of web applications can probably benefit from serverless in some form. So in codingforentrepreneurs.com's case, we don't need to be up all the time, but we do need a scale to meet demand. So like if demand goes up a lot, because there's times of the day that just people aren't watching as much. So it doesn't need to be scaled up as much. When I say scaled up, I mean all of the services don't need to be scaled up. You don't need to have a bunch of computers running or your bunch of servers running to match the demand of the scale of what people are looking for. So serverless is actually really good for that, because it'll scale up and scale down on its own. At least certain kinds of serverless. Pretty much every managed service that I can think of from Google Cloud Platform and AWS does this. They will scale it as much as it needs to be scaled, and it'll scale it down even to 0. So when I mean to 0, it's like actually not running currently. So think of this kind of like a faucet, right? So this is the best analogy that I can make with this. Sometimes in your house, you need to have all of your faucets on. Sometimes you do not, right? So if you have friends over and 2 people are washing their hands and you're washing dishes, you need all of those faucets on, right? But they don't always need to be on. They just need to be on when they need to be on. So that's kind of like how I think of my web applications, is like these faucets. If I needed it on, I need to have the flexibility to turn that on. So many applications fit in that realm. Something that doesn't necessarily fit in that realm yet is really that I've found is something like a production grade database. Those databases take longer to spin up and they aren't ephemeral. So think of it like, do you actually change your kitchen sink all the time? The actual sink? No, you do not. But the water that's coming through there is always water. So a database needs to be on. It can't like be deleted and then bring back up, where your code that runs your application doesn't need to be the same code, right? So it can be deleted and run again. So hopefully that answers your question. That was a good one. Took a little while on that one, but thank you for that one. Let's see. You got an error in Stripe with Django. I don't know how to help you because that is not a actionable question. Thanks for asking, though. Create a tutorial of Django MPTT. I'm trying to remember what that one is. I haven't done. If I remember what it is, then I haven't done it in a while. Let's see. Django MPTT. Modified pre-order tree traversal. Interesting. Thanks for the suggestion. The best way to actually give suggestions is on my website. So this is where I make it kind of democratic for those kinds of suggestions. So that's not at YouTube, but so I'm still getting used to this this program that I'm using here for this. And there it is, cfe.sh/suggest. So that's a good place to suggest new projects. Django MPTT looks interesting, so maybe I'll have to try that out soon. But thanks for sharing that one. What do I think about Golang? And no one talked about it. I haven't used Golang at all, but some people that really like it love it, right? There's just so many areas of software that you can go that make it hard to be like, oh yeah, Golang, I need to do this new thing because it solves a small problem that I might have someday, right? I don't usually pick up things that do that. It's more like, what can I use right now to solve the problem I have right now? Most of the time that fits in with JavaScript or Python. Somewhere in that realm, I can actually solve the problems that I need to solve. So that's usually how I actually learn these new things, is when I'm actually trying to solve a problem for my real projects themselves, you know? So like serverless Django, I have a much better understanding of it because I wanted to move towards having serverless applications, not just for codingforentrepreneurs.com, but also microservices and other projects that I have, because it can scale to zero. And through that, that's how I actually learned how to do that one. I feel the same way about like Go or Rust or Ruby on Rails. Like once I have a really solid, like, yes, I have to learn this for a project, then I will definitely go down that route. Otherwise I won't. How long did it take for me to learn Vim? I don't actually use Vim, so I'm still learning. Probably not the best question to answer that one. Crackdown 148, you are welcome. So Linode versus DigitalOcean for VPS hosting. So both of them are great, right? It comes down to what you need from your host, right? So like DigitalOcean, if I remember correctly, DigitalOcean now has virtual private clouds or VPCs that you can create. Linode, also, as far as I know, does not have those things yet. DigitalOcean also has a few other managed services that you might need. But that adds complexity to your project, where Linode, it's pretty simple on what you need to do. If you need a VM, you just sign up on Linode, spin up a VM. Both of them do that pretty well. So it's kind of hard to say which one's better. I've had great experience with both of them. So the other thing is, in the software world, you can always try both of them out and do a mix of them. They don't have, your applications don't have to be on one or the other. You can use both. Multi-cloud experience. I think that's important, actually. Wow, this is actually a lot more questions than I anticipated. I thought maybe since it's 4 p.m, it would be like that sweet spot of nobody being around. 4 p.m for me, at least. It's probably pretty late for you guys. Where are you guys from? Is it possible to deploy Django with Celery beats set up on Windows 10? Can you run Celery on Windows 10 is the question, I think, because Django you can definitely run on Windows 10. Celery, I believe you can. I'm trying to remember if you need additional things for Celery to run on Windows other than a message store like Redis. So you'll definitely need Redis to run on there. On my website on cfe.sh or codingforentrepreneurs.com, what I have there is I actually have a series on how to set up Redis on any machine, basically, Linux, Windows, Mac. And so maybe go there and try that one out, because that will probably show you how to set up at least Redis. And from there, then you might be able to use Celery as well. I actually haven't tried that setup, so that's something I probably should try. We use AWS all the time. We use it for all sorts of things. So AWS's S3 service is one of our most used service, probably. That's where we host, or rather not host, but store all of our videos. So every single one of our videos is on AWS S3. And then we use a variety of their other services, like their transcribe service, to transcribe a lot of our videos. That's all on our website too. But I've used it for so many other things as well. So I mean, it's kind of hard not to use AWS in this day and age. So take that for what it's worth, I guess, huh? So let's see. So you're something of an administrator, system administrator with a blend of something else. I consider myself a problem solver. Okay, so I don't like to think of it as system admin or help desk or anything like that. Like, I like building projects. So whatever that project is and whatever the technology that comes as a demand for that project, I learn it and I do it. So for me, a lot of that started with web development. So actually, even before that, it was just web design. So HTML and CSS. And then it moved into web development and JavaScript and user interfaces. And now I'm really into doing a lot of the system admin stuff, network engineering, as well as machine learning and stuff like that. So I like to dabble in a lot of things to solve all sorts of cool problems. I know I can run the worker on Windows 10. I just need to add the -p solo at the end because of multiprocessing. Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Sounds about right. I'm seeing people invest in AWS. Yeah, I think you're not going to go wrong learning AWS. But I think before you really learn one of these cloud providers, more of the foundation of what the cloud is and how servers work and all the networking things might be a good idea. Although that's not how I learned it, right? So I learned it to, just going back to like what I just said, is I had a project, I needed it, and there was AWS had a service for it. In this case, was hosting videos. So S3 was like my gateway into AWS. And from there, I've just learned a lot more things. But it would be a good idea to maybe buy a Turing Pi. I'm not sure if you guys have seen one of these. I am having one of the co-founders on my channel in a few days to discuss. And so hopefully we can actually have him out. Let's see here. This is going to be funny. Okay, here's the Turing Pi. So this is a really, really cool board. Definitely worth checking out. It's the board itself, and then you can put Raspberry Pis in here. So essentially, this is a Raspberry Pi cluster. And what you get from something like that is you actually get the ability to understand how the cloud essentially works, right? So you can build your own cluster and your own network and start to learn the things that AWS really, really excels at without actually spending a lot of time on AWS itself, because then you'll start to really be able to unpack the different offerings that AWS does have. But if you are going to start just with AWS, I would recommend starting with EC2 and learning how virtual machines work and how to build your own virtual private cloud and a lot of those things. Some of it's like really tedious things, can be kind of challenging from time to time, but it's so worth it. AWS is really, really good. And if you want to know more about networking in general, Network Chuck is the man. So just check out his YouTube channel. Highly recommend it. At some point, I'll get Network Chuck over here and we'll chat with him live as well. Stranger to VPS hosting of DigitalOcean. Yeah. Yeah, of course, Jamal. Thanks for coming out. Victor, you have two things. Go ahead, ask away. Do you think it's a good idea to go from dev to DevOps? Yes, I think it's a good idea to go what interests you. So whatever interests you, do that, right? And just keep going as deep as you want to go, and then move to the next thing. I think that will serve you well to not stick with one thing too much, because the other part is once you are too niche in one thing, you're not going to really think about. Here's a good example. So I know Django really well, but it wasn't until I started learning networking and understanding networking where I could start to take pieces away from Django and put it towards its own little service that runs in the background that doesn't have to be done in Django itself, but it can let things about Django know. But I wouldn't have known about this if I was just focused on Django. So it's really good to go as deep as you can, but then explore other areas of the technology stack, right? Not just the application layer, but everything else as well. So yeah, I do think it's a good idea to go from dev to DevOps and even more. Which is cheaper, serverless or serverfull? It depends on where you go, but more often than not, I would say serverless will end up being cheaper in the long run because it can scale to zero. But of course, it can be more expensive too. So there are trade-offs to both of them. In my experience, I would say that serverless is probably a great way to go for brand new projects, especially once you reach a certain scale, like you're having millions of people or even hundreds of thousands of hits, let's say per week. Serverless might not be the best option. Then you might want to move into having your own servers that are running all the time instead of having a serverless option. Although you could make your own serverless option. So put my glasses on. I don't have my glasses on my desk right here. But yeah, my mother-in-law got me this hat, and I thought it was really fitting for me. But it's funny. Thank you for the compliment. Appreciate it. ODBC. How often do I use it? Practically never. So this is just a connector for databases. I use Django mostly to integrate with databases. That's not the only one I use for Flask. Geez, I don't use it very often. So SQL Alchemy is the other one that I use often as well, which SQL Alchemy might have the PyODBC library as a dependency. I actually don't know off the top of my head, but I don't use that library directly itself. Will I be teaching Django 3.2 LTS? Absolutely. Probably not right when it comes out, though. I'm rarely ever the first one to cover Django 3.2 or the latest releases because Django is Django. So even Django 1.8 is not really that much different than what we see today. Hey, ZDAX, you're going through the Twitter API. Cool. Nice. Sir, React is best for front end. Yes, React is great for front end. Vue.js, a lot of people seem to love that one too. I am partial to React because that's the one I learned first. 3 a.m. in the morning. Wow. Good morning. How do I pronounce your name? I am not familiar with that pronunciation, but thanks for hanging out this early in the morning. I'm really far behind. Hey, what's up? Welcome. Oh, you're going to bed? Go to bed. Yeah. Azure versus AWS trade-offs. So this is like a hard answer to give you. It's like Amazon versus Microsoft, right? So both of them are great. Both of them do amazing things. And I think AWS probably has more services in general than Azure does. But that doesn't mean that it's necessarily better. So I know AWS a lot. Azure, I haven't spent much time with. So I can't say that Azure's like more difficult to use because it probably isn't, because the underlying concepts are the same across the board. And Microsoft, AWS, and Google Cloud are spending a lot of money and effort and energy to make their platforms as best as they possibly can. AWS is just the leader. It's been around longer, and they've been winning for a long time. So perhaps AWS is the best, but I don't I can't say that with certainty because everyone does things better. I think Google Cloud Platform does serverless better than AWS, as in it's a lot easier to get going and manage and build, in my opinion. And Azure probably has stuff like that too in comparison to AWS. So you want to become a full stack developer. You know, it's you want to know if DevOps is worth your time to boost your resume. Is it worth learning after full stack? Yeah, so it's a good question. So a full stack web developer, well, yeah, I would say knowing at least a little bit of DevOps so you understand what that team does to allow you to be a full stack developer. Because if you don't understand at least a little bit about DevOps, then you're going to probably struggle to work with that team in any given environment. That being said, full stack developers don't have to know these things, but it's about getting an edge up to do better in the world and have more value to whatever jobs or whatever projects that you're working on. So having an understanding of DevOps is a good idea for that. But if you just are still learning full stack development and you're really interested into it, just get to a point where you know that really well. Then you start adding some other things on, unless you're really, really interested in the DevOps route. And in that case, you go and learn that. You know what I mean? Hey, what's up? Western Canada, nice. Argentina, nice. Belarus, China, 8 a.m. coffee time. I like that. Houston, Texas, nice. Houston, I really like Texas. I like it a lot. I'm in California, for those of you who didn't already know. It's 8 a.m. in the Philippines. Cool. Got to go. See ya. Thanks for coming out. Let's see. Only just for video processing and streaming can you take the lessons with Django and Python. Not sure what you mean by that. Please rephrase that. Okay, what is your approach of improving basic Django applications? What are your next steps? Do you rework your screens and add REST framework? Or is it too late to plan ahead for it at this time? So multi-tiered question. How do you improve your Django project? I think it's about trying to remove features you don't need, right? So when you build as a beginner, you probably start to add all of these things that you think that you might need. So removing those things, and that includes removing code, redundant code, or just like extra code that you can probably clean up. That is one of the best ways to get better as far as basic Django stuff. Writing unit tests is a good idea as well. So if you don't write unit tests to test your entire application, that is something else that I would recommend that you challenge yourself to learn. Django REST framework is definitely one of those things that you'll also probably want to add into your mix if you're just at the Django level. There's a lot of stuff we could talk about, but that's where I would attempt. Or really just building a new project from scratch, even if it's the exact same project you just finished, just throw that code to the side for a minute and go ahead and try and do it all over again. That would probably be a really good exercise as well, because you have to think through the same problems, but you can't look at your old code. So you have to kind of engineer the solutions to that. I've learned a ton by rebuilding old projects over and over again. And you learn even more if you try to teach it. So teaching is also another thing that I would recommend doing, because then you'll have to really clearly understand those things. So that's a really, really good way of improving your basic Django skills. 40 watching. You have more students than me when I teach in uni, and my students don't listen to me. I mean, this is the internet, man. Or man or woman. I have 46 right now. But some of these streams get a few hundred, right? And I haven't been doing them in a while, so maybe that's a difference. And also the timing's different. But I honestly don't know if we would have this high level of discussion if it was in person. Maybe, I don't know. But something about being online, you could just watch for a couple minutes or the whole thing and then bail. In person, it's just so much more effort to actually be there, even if it's a university class, whatever it is. So yeah, have I tested hybrid cloud? Yes, I use hybrid cloud all the time. That is different cloud providers and mixing things together. Absolutely. And also on-premise servers and stuff like that too, which I use Raspberry Pis and the Turing Pi, which I showed just a little bit ago. How do I manage having production and dev databases and their migration issues without it having issues? Yeah. So how do you migrate both databases is, I think, the question. So a couple things. You could have it in your workflow of when you push it into production, you also run migrations in at that time. With Google Cloud Platform, you can actually proxy into the production database and run migrations locally. So while you're doing dev, after you've finished your migrations in your dev database, you can run that same command on a proxied production database, which makes it nice and simple to do. There are potential challenges with that as well. I actually think that in some of the build commands, you can just throw it in there, like as far as doing your migrations are concerned. Hopefully that answers your question. I don't know. You've used Django 2 and now it's 3. What's new? Elbow cough. What's new is better support for asynchronous code. That's pretty much that's the big new feature. But it's not fully asynchronous, right? So the database layer is still not asynchronous. I think they're going to be solving that a little bit more with 3.2. But it's still, Django is still Django. I mean, there's definitely changes that happen over time. But I mean, like I said this just a little bit ago, Django 1.8 isn't a whole lot different than Django 2 or Django 3. It's still Django. There are things that are different for sure. So I don't want to say that it's not different. It's definitely different. But Django developers the core developers are really good at maintaining as much possible backwards compatibility as they can. So I don't think that the async stuff is really interesting. So we'll see a lot more of that. That I think is the big main features, but all of the synchronous features will be in there still too. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see here. I'm using this new platform called StreamYard, or maybe it's not new, but it's how I'm answering these questions. And one of the things that's frustrating is with the scroll, you get questions and you're at a certain level, and then it just scrolls you to the bottom. It happens on YouTube, it happens on here. I'm not sure why. Do I use all Docker for all of my projects, including dev and production? No, I do not. So a lot of times I'll actually do dev in non-Docker containers. You don't actually have to do dev in Docker, but you can still build it locally and then push it into production. But actually, in my opinion, once you have your Docker container set up for your project, you don't. There's not a whole lot more you need to do for it, right? So if you add additional dependencies or environment variables or something like that, then yeah, maybe you need to actually build it locally again. But once you build it once and it's actually stable and ready to go, you can just keep going with it. So for my local development, I pretty much only sometimes use Docker. When I go into production, that's when I definitely use Docker containers. And it's not for every project, but it's definitely for most of them these days. So yeah. Hey, thanks for the coffee. Appreciate it. Melbourne or Melbourne. I always say it wrong. Sorry for butchering it, but I remember I had there was somebody I knew pretty well that would always say it really well, like they were from Australia, but they weren't. They were from California, and they said it as poorly as I did. Melbourne. Geez, my accent. Dennis Ivy. Man, what's up? Thanks for the coffee as well, Dennis. Dennis and Falzone. Appreciate it, buddy. Good to see you on here. Do you just jump onto my live streams just randomly, or do you have notifications on for me? Because I'm flattered if that's the case, Dennis. Let's see here. I missed one. Okay, so what do I think about Docker and M1 processors? I haven't used it yet. I have a 16-inch MacBook Pro, And I'm looking forward to when they bring the M1 processor into that. Then maybe I'll be able to give it a chance of actually reviewing it. I might actually start reviewing things more, like actually putting them on the channel and do full-on reviews. That's products and services, because there's a lot of different services that I think might be interested in reviewing. Let me know in the comments if you guys want to see me actually review stuff, or in the live stream, whatever. Because I think there's so many interesting, cool tools out there, and I want to learn more about them, and actually reviewing them might be a good way for me to learn more about them and then share some of them with you. So let me know in the comments again. What's the best place and easy way to deploy a Django application? Some people really like Python Anywhere. I think I've used it twice. I really, really like Heroku because it's not a whole lot different than pushing code to Git. That's because it uses Git to build code. So I think that's the easiest way to deploy a Django application is on Heroku, because they will also provision databases for you. So whether that is a Postgres SQL database, I believe they have MySQL as well. They probably have MongoDB, even though it's not for Django. But then they also have data stores, Redis, and all this. You can do a lot of really cool, interesting things for free on Heroku. The only challenge with Heroku is it starts to add up. So once you actually start moving into production, then all the price of all these things goes up pretty dramatically. And you can't, like, as far as I know, maybe this has changed since I've looked into it, but you can't like actually buy committed use. Like, you can't commit use to Heroku and say, hey, I'm going to be here for 3 years. Let's negotiate or bring the price down. Where like places like AWS and Google Cloud and Azure do that really, really well. Like you can actually pay in advance essentially, or do an agreement with them that you're going to use certain resources for a long time. Yeah. Is a new Mac M1 processors a big issue for coders? No. Docker is supporting M1 processors as far as I know. And I think the alpha came out recently, maybe even the beta, if not the full production version has, like, because the M1 processors have been really, really loved by a lot of different people. But the thing is, do you really need Docker running on your local machine? I mean, I guess that would be the question, because most of the services out there, including Docker.com itself, you can actually build your container elsewhere. You just give the Docker file and push it. They can build it for you. So and you can also use VS Code to remotely connect to those things as well. So a lot of complexity that goes into that just to use Docker. So I'm not sure. I think Docker works just fine on the M1 processor. Let me know what you find. Okay. Next one, David Bomball. Yeah, Bomball, I think his name. Yes, I believe David and Network Chuck, or David and Chuck. Those guys are awesome for networking type things, all sorts of stuff. They talk about Python and code and Raspberry Pis and all these sorts of things. Another one that would be worth checking out is Jeremy. Jeff Geerling. I was wanting to tell you about an engineering channel that I really like. Jeff Geerling. I just had him on my channel interviewing him, but he does all sorts of stuff with Raspberry Pi as well as like virtual machine automation and stuff like that with Ansible. So it's pretty cool. Sent you a message on my website about Django MPPT. Cool. Thanks, Victor. Appreciate it. Let's see. How do you scale your Django-based architecture? Do you accommodate for scaling from the start, or do you wait for traffic growth? I don't think you ever need to worry about scale until you hit scale. Honestly, like it's kind of like a fool's errand. It's kind of like saying that you are preparing for like a tsunami living in Utah, right? I mean, maybe a tsunami is going to hit there, but probably not. So basically preparing for something dramatic to happen when you're starting, that's not going to happen for a long time. And if it does, it's a really good problem to have, because a lot of people will help you solve it, including yourself. You'd be very interested in doing that. So that's why I use serverless, actually. So Google Cloud Platforms, Cloud Run, or GCP Cloud Run has something that makes it really easy. You just deploy a Docker container, or you deploy Dockerfile really to Cloud Run. Eventually, you use Cloud Build and then Cloud Run, and you can scale up as needed. The price is probably gonna skyrocket if you really get overloaded, but GCP will handle your growth, your tremendous growth, and then you can work it out with them directly on how to solve those issues and also building up your team. So tremendous growth is a really good problem to have, but it's not something you need to worry about until you actually have it. Hey, you're welcome anytime. Thanks for coming out. What methods do you know about the synchronized process in Docker on Python? What do you mean by this exactly? Please let me know. You feel like you spoke to a star. I don't know about that, but thank you. Appreciate it. Does Android iOS apps run on Django? No. Django is a web application framework. That's it, right? So Python can run on Android and iOS. I'm trying to remember exactly how you run on iOS, but it definitely can run on Android. So Python is the programming language. It's a runtime that can run on those platforms. Django is a web application framework that it just doesn't make sense for it to run on Android or iOS. That being said, Android or iOS apps can use the internet to connect to a Django application that runs on a server somewhere. You know? Cool. What do you think about AI and ML as a web developer? So I said earlier that I think of myself as a problem solver, not as a web developer. AI and machine learning, or machine learning specifically, and all the things that it encompasses, is incredibly fascinating. I can't wait until I can write like a little bit of code and then it just solves the rest of my problem for me. I think that's where we're going with machine learning and web development. But the thing is like, how do you frame these problems? And that's where web developers come in. I think it's incredibly fascinating, and it's definitely the future of how we're going to be doing these things. Cool, Simon. Thanks. Appreciate it. Would I create a DevOps course? Yes, eventually I want to create a DevOps course. I just have a lot of things in the pipeline that are preventing me from doing that anytime soon. Honestly, Network Chuck or David Bomball, like we mentioned earlier, those guys have a lot of really good stuff. So check them out. I think it'd be well worth your time. 2:30 a.m. and you just woke up. Dang, man, you are an early riser. That is amazing. What time do you go to bed? At like 6 p.m.? Or what would that be? 1800 hours, depending on. Oh wait, well you said a.m. So 6 p.m. Yeah, no. India, nice. It's pretty early in the morning there. WebSockets or Ajax? Each one prevents its own challenge, right? I typically use asynchronous JavaScript requests mostly, so that's what Ajax is. Good day, Harold. Australia, huh? Where in Australia, huh? Japan, nice. 9:30. Cool. I'm kind of falling behind here. Let's see. Got another one. Nope, that's not it. Here we go. Hey, thanks. Thanks for the super chat. You're halfway done with Tweet Me Too. Nice. You found how to deploy a website. How do you deploy to an app store? So the web applications are not the same as applications that you would submit to an app store. That's kind of the key thing there. So submitting to an app store, you typically have a bundled software that you can download to any machine that works with that app store and run. Let me know if that answers your question. How to use SEO in Django to grow your website. There's a lot of SEO techniques. Django is not really unique to how to do SEO. So like SEO and Django don't need each other. Django can do SEO just like any other website, basically. And so it's more of a technique of like how to use SEO, and that's like a long discussion we can have for all that stuff, maybe some of the time. Is Python Django a good framework to develop applications like video streaming, such as YouTube, or would it be better developed in Node.js or something like Go? Actually, to do streaming, you would probably use something more like Nginx. Nginx is actually how you would probably do streaming, not using Python or any of those things that you just mentioned, but Nginx as a technology with some powerful virtual machines running. So hopefully that answers your question. You can back up a second. What you could do is you could actually use Django, any of those, Django, Python, probably even Go, Node.js. You can use other web applications to authenticate, and then using Nginx to actually do the video streaming itself. But this is not an easy thing to solve, like on your own. I mean, it takes a significant amount of knowledge to be able to effectively do it. So please make a tutorial for Instagram-like app with Django. Thanks for the suggestion. If you take a look at TweetMe2, it's very similar to Instagram, because Twitter and Instagram are very similar, except in TweetMe2, we don't actually use the images. We just use tweets, like the actual text. That's like pretty much the main difference. But the way it actually works is almost identical, with the exception of uploading images. So I definitely recommend checking that one out. You tried Docker on a Pi, and you lost all your hair. Yeah, that's a good point. So I think Docker's support on Raspberry Pis could be better, although I think it is getting a lot better. And it depends on when you tried this, but I think the Raspberry Pi 4 is probably the way to go for this. But I also think that the reason that Kubernetes is dropping Docker runtime is part of this reason. You still be able to use Docker containers, but the actual runtime is changing. So anyways, thanks for the comment. Just joined the family a few days ago. Really enjoying the content. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thinkpads versus Macbooks Thoughts. Well, I've been using a MacBook for a really long time. I probably would have a ThinkPad if I wanted a Windows laptop or if I wanted a Linux laptop. The reason I don't necessarily want those things is I use Linux for pretty much, well, I definitely use Linux for all of my servers, right? So I actually have the ability to get into Linux all the time. So I actually work in that environment all the time. And Windows, I can't do as much on the software side as easily as I can with my Mac. Linux is the easiest to do all the software things I need to do. Mac is the next easiest. Windows is the hardest. It's not hard. It just takes longer, and there's less support for it with a lot of open source software. So yeah, but ThinkPads is probably what I'd buy as a Windows laptop, though. Maybe not. I haven't thought about it in a while. So is Pythonic framework like Django and Flask a good way to develop applications like video streaming? Oh, we just answered this. Am I going the wrong direction? I might be going the wrong direction, or we're getting a couple of the same questions. Bug bounty jobs. This feels like it'd be kind of tedious. You're just finding bugs. I don't know. It's not something I'm interested in. I like doing full projects and having other people tell me about bugs. So it might be a really good job, though, because there's some people that absolutely love doing it and get paid well to find great bugs. How would you go about bundling Django for the App Store? So I mentioned this a little bit ago, but the main thing is you'll use Django as your web application, right? So your web application, then your application that you put in an app store, let's say it's Electron or it's a Android application or an iOS application, those applications would then communicate to your Django project over the internet and through an API. That's pretty much what you would do. So similar to so on TweetMe2, I think if I remember correctly, we used several different API methods for JavaScript to get the data. Your client, any mobile application, so like Android, iOS, Electron, desktop applications, all of those would use very similar protocols to get the same sort of data, and then you would bundle it for the App Store that way. Hopefully that helps. I did skip a lot of comments. I'm sorry. I scrolled, and I'm not going to be here very much longer. Hopefully we can get back to yours. Just ask it again. Thank you. Which one's better for freelancing? Django, Bootstrap, and jQuery, or Django REST Framework and React? Django REST Framework, React, and Bootstrap are probably what you need these days. jQuery is probably nice to know, but definitely not the best option for building user interfaces any longer. Although there are still a lot of jobs using jQuery. So, but Bootstrap is just basically how it's designed and how it looks. It does have, or it did have jQuery features for a long time. It doesn't anymore. It uses pure JavaScript now. You're looking to build a marketplace, something like Fiverr, but for another field. That's cool. CFE.sh, that is, we've got a number of different projects that can help you out there, including our e-commerce course. It's using an older version of Django, but you will learn so much about building a e-commerce course. And in there, we show you how to build a marketplace as well, or convert an e-commerce application into a marketplace application. So check that out, Okay, so I'll be on for just a few more minutes. So hopefully I can answer some questions from you guys, and be sure to subscribe and come back again. Yeah. So I'm going to be doing a live stream on Friday. I'm going to be chatting with the co-founder of TuringPie. And when I do chat with him, I'm sure we'll take some questions. So be sure to check that out this Friday. Let's see here. So how do I fix this error? It seems that scikit-learn has not been built correctly on a Mac. What is the error? Because I have had literally no issues with scikit-learn on my Mac ever. Thanks for the question, though. What would you say to people who are not using test-driven development? I do not actually build very many projects using test-driven development myself. I kind of feel like it's nonsensical, although I also am starting to see the light. Test-driven development, for those of you who don't know, you literally write the test before anything else. So you write the test, and then you build the code to the test to make sure that it solves and solidifies what that test is. Now, I think the rationale behind it was because you're like, hey, I want this to happen from whatever this application is. So I'm going to do what I want to have happen first. I'm going to write the test. I'm going to prove that that's working, and then I'll write the code to make sure that that's working too. I don't like that method of development myself, because I would rather tinker around with what I'm trying to do in the code itself and then write tests for that to make sure that it's effectively working. So I kind of do the opposite of that. I do code-driven test development. I don't know what it's called, but some people are obsessed with this, and I'm trying to get the guys from, or Michael specifically from testdriven.io, I believe that's their website, to come chat with me. And I want to learn more about his philosophy behind this, because some people absolutely swear by it and think that people that don't do test-driven development are just nuts. So maybe that's me. Okay, so a couple more questions. Let's see here. Is Python good for a mobile app? You can use Kiwi, but I've never had great success with it. I would rather use React Native, which is basically React, and building mobile applications from there. My favorite Django plugins, like Django packages. My favorite one, or the one I use the most, is probably the Django REST framework. I think hands down, that's the one I use the most. Next is probably Django hosts, which allows you to have subdomain control. I really like that one. What else? I can't think of another one right now that I would say I use in pretty much every project. Those two I pretty much use in every project. Celery is another one. Here we go. Celery seems to be the standard for an asynchronous queue for Django. Is there an easy Django library for Apache Kafka and other queues out there? I think there's one called Django Q, but just the letter Q. If I remember correctly. I'm not sure if it works with Apache Kafka. I haven't had to use Apache Kafka for any project, so I haven't experienced it much. But Celery is great. Like, it's mature. It works really well. It actually uses Redis as the actual message broker. I think Celery is like the way to go. At first, it's kind of complex because of the nature of asynchronous programming. But once you actually get it down, which I talk about a lot in my recent project called Time and Task 2 on my website, that one will hopefully clarify a lot of the issues that come out with building with Celery. So thanks for the question. There are 2 ways they can help coding without having bugs in your program. The third one is the best way. Yeah. I'm assuming you're talking about maybe you're just making a funny joke. I don't know. So it's good. Okay. There we go. The answer was awesome. Love your content. Thank you so much. Keep getting stuck making the app communicate with the website, but I love to learn. So what I would do is I would actually strip away all of the authentication in your local development just to see if you can get the API to actually talk to your app. If you can do that, then you start adding the authentication. You might even remove CORS. This is CORS is a protocol that blocks cross-platform requests. So if you are getting stuck with the communication issue, it's probably one of those 2 things, authentication or CORS. And if you remove them from your Django app, then you should be able to communicate no problem. Another idea you might have is literally just spin up a really quick Flask or Fast API function that is just one single function that returns data back to your app. And then that way your app can see how it communicates with the web application, and to make sure that it's not on the app side, or rather it's not on the server side, but it's on the app side that's having the problem. Because what you need to do is an HTTP request. That's what you need to do. And probably with the content type of application/JSON when you're doing a communication between your app and some sort of REST API, that's usually how they communicate. There are other ways to do it, but that is probably the most common and the one that I would recommend that you do too. So hopefully that helps answer your question. So once you can get that spun up, just some sort of API that your app side can integrate with just fine. That actually works out pretty good. Another thing that might be worth checking out. I'm going blank on it. I think it's httpben.org. That is another way where you can just send a request. That single request can then be pinged back to you. So you don't actually even need a backend at all to use httpben as a REST API to make sure that it's not on your app side as well. So you don't need Flask or Fast API in what I just said. You can literally just use httpben, bin.org and test it out that way. Thanks for that other live chat. Appreciate it. Or super chat. Cool. How do I get the motivation to learn new things and technologies? I think it comes from clarity of what I want, right? So I want to have more skills so I can build more things. To me, building things is so much fun. It's frustrating, but part of that frustration is also very satisfying once you get through it. And I think sometimes you can lose motivation when you're not getting through it. You're just stuck. So sticking through it and working through it a few times trains you on how to get through it in the future, right? So a good example of this is, well, I have 2 young kids. So you see this with kids when they're learning anything, but especially learning to walk. It's incredibly obvious when learning to walk. They keep on trying. They keep on trying. They get visually frustrated like all the time. We do that too as adults. But a lot of us then just be like, maybe this isn't for me, without giving it adequate time. So the question is, like, how long would you give the average baby to learn how to walk? Like, before you give up on them and they no longer try anymore. Like, it's like that kid's going to walk, right? Like, if you have a kid that, barring any other health issues, if you have a kid that they're going to walk one way or the other. So once you decide exactly it is what you want, you just keep going until you get it, right? You're going to hit stumbles, you're going to hit roadblocks, but remember, it's like walking. It takes a kid a really long time to start walking, right? If it took a kid 3 years to walk, which does happen from time to time, if it took a kid 3 years to walk, that's 3 years of dedicated every day, trying constantly all day to try and walk eventually, and then they will. And then shortly after that, they'll start running. I think for me too is software is like the only like modern marvel that we have that humans can actually control is like software and technology, right? Like, like I said, I have 2 kids. As much as I try to control them, I cannot, right? They're still their own people. It's like crazy how individual it happens at such a young age. But this server right here, this computer right here, I can write some commands and I control it. It's just amazing. Like, so I'm still fascinated by what technology can do and how it connects us and helps us. And I think a lot of those things is how it keeps me going. And there's always something new. So it's a revolving door of constant challenge with technology, but one I really enjoy. Now, if you don't enjoy it, then maybe it's not for you. Maybe something else should be the thing that you are motivated to learn and get better at. Because I think there's something for everybody. So, anyways, thanks for the question. Appreciate it. What's the ultimate way of learning coding fast? This is funny. Okay, so you're setting yourself up for failure if you're trying to learn it fast. So if you want to feel dumb, try to learn how to code fast. Right? That's the surefire way to feel dumb, because there is so much stuff that's going on with software that will cause you to be really frustrated really quickly. And so if you're trying to learn it fast, it's just, I basically just got done saying this, but if you're trying to learn it fast, you are literally saying that if I don't learn it fast, I'm a failure, right? That should not be your approach. It should just be to learn it, period, however long it takes, right? So Elon Musk, I admire him a lot, and he wants to go to Mars. I believe he'll go to Mars. I don't know when. He doesn't know when. Maybe it's in 5 years. Maybe it's in 15. It doesn't really matter. Sure, they set a date. They have ambitions for it, but that's not going to be failure. Failure would be to never go, not to meet some arbitrary date. So fast, in my mind, is arbitrary and setting yourself up for failure. So keep that in mind and just keep going when it comes to learning. Thanks for the question. Okay, I really got to get going. So this is probably going to be the last one. Am I currently involved in machine learning projects? What should we expect with machine learning tutorials? Yes, so I have a tutorial called Try Keras on my website right now. So Keras is a way to write code that turns into a deep learning algorithm, essentially, that does some prediction. So machine learning is incredible. It takes data and it makes software from it, right? So it makes an application. Literally, it makes an algorithm. That's essentially what it's doing. And as a software developer myself, that's what I do, is I think of how best to make this application run, and I build the algorithm myself. I decide from all the choices of options that I have to build that algorithm. Machine learning kind of flips that. It says, here's all the data that has come at a result of, whatever, right? So whatever it is, literally anything can be applied to machine learning can be applied to any kind of data, which is also what's fascinating about it. But it'll go through all this data doing essentially simple math, but at a complex scale, like a almost impossible to perceive scale. It'll continuously do this math until it comes out with this algorithm, which is essentially a big guesser, right? It's just taking a bunch of data and making a guess. Kind of like if I showed you a coin and asked you to guess if I'm going to flip it, what side it would land on, you would probably guess one of 2 options. You're not going to guess 5 options. You'll probably guess 1 or 2. That comes from experience and data and perception and understanding of the world, but more specifically understanding of coins, that they have 2 sides, right? So machine learning is not a whole lot different than that. You give it a bunch of data that it needs to know about, and then it'll run a bunch of experiments to be able to make guesses. And so that's it. That's the thing. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, guys. Thanks for the questions. A lot of really good ones. I had a great discussion. It's been a while since I've been on YouTube, on my own channel at least. and I had a really good time with this one. What do you guys think of the new setup? I decided to not be on the white wall anymore. Got my garage here. I'm kind of leaning into the space that I actually have versus trying to make it feel like it's been the same space for years, which it has not been. Sooner or later, I'll have a proper studio setup. I guess like for what I started with, I do have a proper studio setup. I mean, there's a big light right there. There's a camera right here. That is not my web camera. I have a mic here. I guess it's a studio setup already, but I mean like one that somebody actually like I could show it to you. Oh yeah, Hacker Daddy, this is the thing. It's like, so when I make a video of my actual studio setup, maybe I should do that. We'll see. So yeah. This is funny. Do I read spiritual books? And you guys, I can't help it. I can't help but answer more questions. Okay. So do I read some spiritual books? And once there's such a conversation, do you drink some spirit alcohol, maybe some whiskey? What's your favorite? Do I read spiritual books? I read mostly nonfiction, or textbooks actually. So textbooks are nonfiction. And I do enjoy whiskey. Like whiskey on rocks is good. I do like that. So bourbon mostly, but I don't have it that often. It's more of like a once in a while thing. So I probably would have a beer more often than I would have whiskey, but probably because my wife likes beer too. So we drink beer together. But it's not even that often anyway, but it's a fun, nice thing to have. Maybe I'll have some whiskey tonight in honor of you, Simon. Is that what he's told me to call you? So yeah, thanks. When's my studio setup coming? I probably need to clean up my studio a lot before I actually review it, right? I've got some random stuff on my desk, like grommets from my, so hopefully soon though. I got some cool stuff that I'm working on, and I actually am going to hang up. Let me just grab it. 1 second. I'm going to hang up this thing. It's all dusty. I'm like, it's weird because like, there's, I don't feel different than when I did when I first started doing YouTube, right? So like, it still feels very similar, except I passed this like threshold that YouTube put out. Right. So I still think there's a long way for me to go, as in I have a lot of things that I want to learn, but it is really cool to have recognition that exists. So I need to put that up also for my studio. Okay. You last few guys, no more questions. Oratile, you're the last one. Okay. Next one. Are you going to do tutorials this year? Yes, absolutely. I already on my website. So cfe.sh, I've already been doing a bunch on there. So my website is codingforentrepreneurs.com, but cfe.sh is the easiest way to get there. It'll redirect you to it. Okay. Which courses we should simulate to have the practical experience after knowing the basics to make us able to get through Django interviews? Well, I haven't been on a Django interview, so I don't actually know what they're going to try and ask you. But what I will say is 2 Scoops with Django is a great book to pick up as reference after you finish. I like basically any of my big projects. So my e-commerce course, it's an older version of Django. But after you finish that, hopefully you have a bunch of questions on how this affects the newer versions. I will have a newer version of that course out sometime this year. I don't know when. But doing that's a full project. Like there's not a whole lot of ambiguity beyond it. So if you do that, I think you'll know and have practical experience beyond the basics for all sorts of things. Hey, how's it going? Can I suggest a course on custom permissions? Custom permissions, I don't know of a course off the top of my head for the Django built-in permissions. But what you can do is you can build a model that every user has and give them different fields like as in choices or user types, and do permissions based off of that on any given view. The Django REST framework makes that also way easier than just regular Django, I think. How long does it take you to learn a new programming language? Do I know Java? I do not know Java. I've only dabbled with it a little bit. Check out my buddy Mitch at Coding with Mitch on his YouTube channel to learn all sorts of stuff related to Java and Android development. But like learning new programming languages, I'm not actually I don't spend that much time learning new programming languages. I pretty much spend most of my time refining and also learning new libraries or packages in programming languages I already know, right? So I already know Python and I already know JavaScript. It's very rare that I need to use a different programming language to accomplish a lot of the goals I have. But something like NumPy, which is a Python package, is certainly different than regular Python. So learning that probably took like, I mean, I'm still learning it, honestly, but it probably took about, I don't know, 2 months, a month to really get a gist of exactly how to use it and when to use it and what to use it for, and also how to do what I need to do in it. But I used it a long time before that, just here and there, not really needing to know like what the shape of a matrix is or something like that, you know? So yeah. Okay, fine. I'll give you guys a couple more questions. Do I do tailwinds? No, I do not. Thanks for the question. Do I know about Fast API and what do you think about AI? And what do you mean about AIO HTTP? Fast API is cool. It's great for rapid. This answers both of your questions. It's great for rapid API building, but as soon as you need user authentication, I always say go to Django. It's going to be a lot easier to Django and a lot less headache in the long run. And Django has an opinion about it. So the Django core developers have an opinion on how you should actually do authentication, including the Django REST framework. Fast API, the core developers of that do not have that as far as I know, because it's not built into Fast API. That's true with Flask and AIO HTTP. But if you have like a machine learning algorithm that you need to run, Fast API is great for that. There's all sorts of other things you can use with Fast API for. You can absolutely use it with a database. So I'm not saying not a database, but I'm saying specifically user authentication. I always tend to use Django then because using something like Fast API or Flask or AIO HTTP or some of these micro or smaller web frameworks, they don't have user authentication built into it or user management built into it at all. You have to add those things on. And as soon as you start throwing and adding a bunch of layers onto it, it starts to make that project a lot more complex and a lot less manageable for other people. So if you ever want somebody to help you out, they have to learn how you cobble together all of that user authentication stuff. Just that alone is like worth using Django, in my opinion. But Fast API is really cool. I've used it a lot for machine learning algorithm hosting and all that. That is like my go-to for machine learning algorithm hosting as a microservice. But also something I'm toying with is using it as an entry point for pipeline, like either it's a data science pipeline or some pipeline processing, where it's just this small little web application that's running that you can call and it will run like a PyPyR pipeline, which is a really cool package as well. But basically just running some other process that's not in your main web application. I'll probably end up using Fast API for that a lot. So like maybe 40 minutes longer than I intended to go. But thanks for coming out, guys. I appreciate it. A lot of really good questions. Let me know if you have suggestions for other kinds of videos, and also let me know in the comments if you do want me to start reviewing services, and if that's true, which services should I review? So like MailChimp or SendFox, or some of those other third-party services that you've heard about, you've thought about, maybe you want to actually see more about it. Let me know. Or even AWS and Google Cloud Platform, stuff like that. I'm definitely down to do like a quick overview of the way I see it as far as those things are concerned. Anyways, thanks again, guys. See you next time.